Welcome to the Economy magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with the top reports in the global economy. On today's magazine, wine from Israel's Golan region reaches new heights, and Honda's investment in Mexico inspires interest in Japan. First, the headlines. EU foreign ministers are finalizing a list of sanctions after Crimea voted in a referendum to reunite with Russia. More than 96% of Crimeans voted to break away from Ukraine and rejoin Russia, according to preliminary results. The European Union last week drew up a list of 120 to 130 Russians who could be hit with travel bans and asset freezes. If Russia still does not respond, the EU will implement more far-reaching sanctions, including an arms embargo and trade restrictions.
It's quite clear that the behavior of Russia until now is completely unacceptable, and I would do anything possible to avoid sanctions, because I believe everybody will suffer if we get into sanctions, but the only ones who can prevent this are the Russians.
Vodafone acquired Ono, Spain's second largest provider of broadband internet, pay television, and fixed telephony services for $10 billion. The acquisition price of Ono reflects a multiple of 7.5 times earnings for 2013. The deal marks the latest move in Vodafone's strategy to add fixed line networks to augment its mobile services. By acquiring Ono, Vodafone is following a strategy it used in Germany last year when it became an integrated provider through the purchase of cable network operator Kabel Deutschland. German power generator RWE is selling its oil and gas exploration unit DIA for over $7 billion. Russian billionaire Mikhail Friedman is acquiring DIA for his energy investment vehicle L1 Energy. The acquisition of DIA, which operates in 14 countries worldwide, will be the company's stepping stone for entering the oil and gas industry. RWE, Germany's second largest utility, reported an annual net loss of $3.9 billion for 2013. The sale of DIA is part of a strategy of focusing on the company's core power station business. In France, Vivendi chose cable group Numericable to finalize a deal to sell its telecom unit SFR for $16.4 billion. Vivendi and Numericable now enter 3 weeks of exclusive negotiations to finalize the deal. France's Minister of Industrial Renewal had hoped for a merger between rival Bouygues and SFR, but consumers expressed fears a Bouygues SFR deal would result in higher mobile prices, as the merger would cut the number of mobile operators from 4 to 3. And lastly, Serbians voted in snap polls that many expect will garner more support for the ruling center-right SNS party. The SNS called early polls in hopes of winning a new mandate to push ahead with economic reform. With public debt swelling to more than 60% of GDP, the next government will have to reform obsolete labor laws and cut down on bureaucracy. Serbia's $11 billion budget is struggling to cope with 1.7 million pensioners and a bloated public sector. As a stringent austerity package looms, however, some remain skeptical.
It's a choice between a fairy tale and a real and possible life. If we go on like this, the country will go bankrupt, and it will be a huge problem for all the people who live here.
Israeli wine has been on the rise in recent years, with a growing variety based on the country's wide spectrum of terroirs. Israel's Golan region in particular has given rise to some of the highest quality wines. Daniel Roth and Anthony Lasmi have more in the following report.
In the Golan Heights, the economy is thriving, in part because of the booming wine trade. All of this is happening just miles from the conflict that has impoverished Syria over the last 3 years, causing countless deaths and millions of refugees. The Golan's vines have always been plentiful, and with the kickstart in the 1980s, production has reached 7 million bottles, 11% of the total wine production of Israel, which occupies the Golan Heights.
The Golan Wineries and the Visitor Center started this process of wine tourism. We brought people and tourists to visit and taste this great wine, and this also led to general tourism in the Golan.
Since 1983, winemakers have been diversifying 17 different wine varieties in the Golan's many microclimates. 25% of production is exported to 30 different countries, and the growth is continuing.
What we grew at the last 5 years is mainly the vineyards. We planted more vineyards, and slowly we are the ability to produce more bottles, but we are not planning to grow production too much.
It seems that the whole area is motivated by the prospect of bettering the quality of the wine made there, and research is an extremely important sector. The Golan Heights winery won the Wine Star Prize in 2012, a first for an Israeli wine and a sign of international recognition.
One of the most important research is to understand as quick as possible the potential of our soil, of our region, how the sun affects the vineyards, how to irrigate the vineyards the best possible to save money, water from one position and to give enough water to the quality.
Occupied in the 1967 war, according to Israel, they annexed the Golan in 1981. But the international community, Syria included, have never recognized the move. And the wines of the Golan are among the products called out by the international boycott, divestment and sanctions movement in protest of Israeli occupation.
Some countries are boycotting Ramat Golan's products, but most wines from Ramat Golan that go to the European market and the international market in general is more targeted to the Jewish population, so we almost don't feel it at all. The Jewish audience doesn't consider the border issue.
Israeli wines were exported to a market of 180 million in 2013. And through conflict and controversy, no matter who's making it, wine, unlike many products, does better with time.
And we're now joined by Israeli wine expert Avi Feldstein. Avi, thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome.
From what I learned, about 90% of wines that we have today were developed for the past 20 years, in Israel anyways. What is the significance of the Israeli wine industry for Israeli agriculture, for example?
Well, it's an important and growing importance. First of all, because it's a very prestigious kind of agriculture, and the product is considered highly. And because it uses less and less quantities of water, which is quite important in a country like Israel that doesn't enjoy huge rainfall.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So do we see now, is it growing exponentially?
It is growing. It is growing. Well, I would say that we went and a revolution, but the revolution was qualitative, not quantitative. We saw over the last...
but also quantitatively. I mean, there wasn't really as much wine before, correct? There really a lot of the wines we have today basically are wineries that were just established not so long ago.
In the lack of official or reliable statistics, it's very debatable. The consumption is measured by liter per capita per year.
Right.
And a lot of people would say that it doesn't move significantly from 4.5 liters.
In terms of Israeli consumption?
Yes.
Right.
Let's say with comparison to France or Italy, the numbers are 45 to 50.
Right.
So you see the consumption is very little and it doesn't shifted a lot.
So on that note, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but since you're talking about Israeli consumption, how is Israeli consumption affected by the recession that we had here?
Well, first of all, the growth was in quantity. People used to buy now better wines and pay better prices. But because there are some economical problems, this is a threat, a direct threat to the new fashion of consuming quality wines.
I see.
You can see that there is a growth in the quantity that is produced, especially in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
We stayed about 45,000 tons yearly for more than a decade, but now the numbers are shifting to 48, 50, and there's a big question what will happen with this surplus of production, which are all qualitative. They are all qualitative varietals. This is maybe one of the best signs that it was a quality revolution, because we are growing quality varietals and new varietals and not the old ones.
Right.
You can see a distinct drop in the quantity of Carignan, let's say, from 40% 40% of the Reds 20 to 30 years ago to less than 5.
I see. Now, the thing that really actually gets me, that fascinates me, is that Israel is this tiny little country, maybe half the size of the Netherlands, but it's elongated. It's between Europe, Asia, and Africa, and there's all these microclimates all over the place, all over Israel. Do we have almost unlimited ability to keep on growing, expanding the wine industry? What does it depend on?
Well, again, quantitatively, we have limits. Israel is not a big country. We are now producing, let's say, 26 million liters per year, with comparison for 4 billion or 5 billion in the big European producers. And there's not enough land to grow exponentially in that respect. But the quality is growing, and you see international writers, critics, economists giving high scores to Israeli wine.
Right.
This little drop of wine is arising a lot of noise and response. And the export is growing, still based on the platform of kosher wine, but starting to emerge outside of it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Avi Feldstein, for joining us about Israeli wines. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Japanese car manufacturer Honda opened a new factory creating 5,000 jobs in the Mexican city of Celaya. To welcome the Japanese investors who have invested a total of $4 billion in the past 7 years, Celaya set up a new school teaching Japanese. More in the following report.
This is the new Honda factory in Celaya, a town in the center of Mexico. It cost $1.2 billion and has created more than 5,000 jobs, one of the biggest investments from a car manufacturer in the country's history. With the growing Japanese influence in the city, the inhabitants are trying to learn more about Japanese culture. Felipe, who already works at Honda, decided to attend the newly opened Japanese school.
Me interesa aprender su forma de pensar.
I want to learn their way of thinking, because at work you realize that they think in a different way than Latin Americans do. And maybe if I learn their idiosyncrasies, I'll be able to work better with them.
Idiosincrasia, pues ayuda a trabajar mejor con ellos.
Speaking Japanese is a crucial advantage in this region of Mexico, a country which has recently become the world's 4th biggest car exporter.
It's the spirit of surpassing oneself. They tell themselves, I'm done with studying, I speak another language. In general, the most common language is English, but now it's Japanese. It's about surpassing oneself to find a better job.
The arrival of the Japanese firms has also boosted the local economy. The previously agricultural region has been transformed into one of the country's main car manufacturing centers.
La llegada de Honda y la llegada de las empresas que son proveeduría.
The arrival of Honda and of the supplying companies created an economic boom in the Laya Bajío region. It spread to shops, restaurants, hotels, and housing demands have also increased.
Hoteles, hay más demanda de casas habitación.
In the past 7 years, Japanese car manufacturers have invested a total of $4 billion in the state of Guanajuato and created 25,000 jobs. 5,000 Japanese people are expected to move to Mexico before 2016.
And now for a look at some of the more unconventional stories we gathered for you from the press worldwide in Media Watch with Daniel Roth. Okay, so Daniel, I understand we have something about China from The Guardian.
Yeah, so The Guardian's carrying the story. Everyone's carrying the story, really. Alibaba is going public. It's the biggest e-commerce site in the world that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of.
Right.
They do more business than eBay and Amazon combined. They say that they move about $150 billion a year. It's huge, and
Sure,
they're going
public.
public.
Chinese buying, you know?
They're going public, and it's going to be the biggest public offering since Facebook. It's going to be about the same size. They're looking at raising $15 billion.
Right.
The company's valued at over $100 million. Similar to Facebook, which was $16 billion that they were looking to raise, and also over $100 billion. It's just huge, and the reason it's interesting is because outside of China, most people have not heard of this company, Alibaba, but it's
Right.
actually just like a huge
gigantic
company. It cannot be overstated.
Right. And there are people who are actually buying outside of China as well, but it's really, the thing that's fascinating is that it's such a gigantic company and it's really not as well known as, say, Facebook, which everybody knows about.
Right, worldwide. And, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg's famously been traveling to China trying to pry China open to get Facebook in.
Right.
Actually, the CEO of Twitter is heading to China for the first time ever. And Twitter has been more quiet, saying they don't really want to get into China, into the Chinese market. Now it seems that they do, because you're talking about 600 million internet users. So you're talking about just an enormous market, a market that's doubled the size of the U.S. population in general. So again, it cannot be overstated. You can't.
The significance of this,
It's huge, and you're seeing companies that you've heard of, like Facebook and Twitter, kind of pour in after this news.
Okay. All right. Well, Daniel, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for joining us on Alibaba. That's it for us today. I'm Benjamin Chang Alfares. Please send us your comments via Twitter, our website, and Facebook, and join us again tomorrow.